Okay, next up we have Bob Criner from Stralis. Over to you, Bob, to do a 60-second pitch.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. So I'm Bob Criner, the co-founder and CEO of Stralis. We make emission-free hydrogen electric propulsion systems for aircraft. Now, the world is looking for a way to decarbonize aviation, and unfortunately, batteries are too heavy, and with them, you can't fly far enough in an aircraft. So we've developed a patent-pending fuel cell that runs on hydrogen, and it's 6 times lighter than any other fuel cell out there. And what this does is it unlocks the ability to fly on hydrogen electric propulsion for distances that are 10 times further than batteries. And it will also achieve 50% reduction in operating cost versus fossil fuel powered planes. So we're working with a number of different customers. We have 11 different airlines that have signed 263 million USD in letters of intent to purchase our aircraft. We also have built an amazing team of 12 killer engineers. A lot of us have worked at big aerospace companies like Airbus, Boeing, and Bombardier. So we know how to develop and certify airplanes, but we've also worked at some fast-moving startups like Google X, Heart Aerospace, and Archer. So we can also move fast and rapidly innovate. We've recently won 3 different grants here in Australia worth a total of $2.5 million. We've also raised about $2.6 million in private capital from investors like Y Combinator, Trucks Venture Capital, and Climate Capital. Right now, the team is working hard on testing our technology on the ground, and we're pushing to fly the aircraft that's behind us here, the white one, middle of next year, which would be a really exciting moment for Australia.
Awesome, Bob. Great pitch. I'd love to start just on the competitive environment from a technology point of view. You mentioned batteries, you're doing hydrogen, lots of discussion about sustainable aviation fuels. Like, how do you kind of make sense of it?
Yeah, I think this all actually is sort of the start of Stralis came from us working at a company called Magniex, where we developed and flew a couple of battery electric aircraft. So we realized firsthand the problems with batteries, and really it boils down to 3 key issues with batteries that hydrogen is able to solve. One is its range and payload. So with batteries, they're too heavy and you can't fly very far and you can't carry very much. There's also a cycle life issue. So on airplanes, you fly them quite often. So you cycle batteries much harder on a plane than you do on a car. And that means you need to replace them quite often. And the third thing we noticed was refueling or recharging times. Like big batteries take time to recharge. We use liquid hydrogen, which is a liquid fuel that you can rapidly refuel. So yeah, that's kind of how we settled on hydrogen electric. The other piece, sustainable aviation fuel, we definitely keep a close eye on, and we think that will sort of target the longer range intercontinental flights. And we think hydrogen electric will do the shorter stuff.
You said in your intro that you might be, I think, 6 times more efficient than other
6 times lighter.
Lighter.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how have you been able to achieve that? I'd love to understand that, and also just kind of understand where you're up to with the core technology, which I believe is the type of fuel cell.
Yeah, it's our high temperature fuel cell is really the secret sauce that we bring to the table. So there's been a recent breakthrough in PEM fuel cell technology, and it's called ion pair. So we didn't invent it, but we're the first in the world to patent and design a fuel cell stack leveraging this technology. We use the analogy similar to what Tesla did with Panasonic battery cells. So the lithium-ion battery came out 15 years ago. Tesla didn't invent that, but they leveraged that to build a battery pack that unlocked electric cars that could drive useful distances. So we're doing something similar, again, building this lightweight fuel cell optimized for aerospace. And it's only just become viable in the last 6 to 12 months. The technology became commercially ready.
So you mentioned Tesla as a comparator there with the Panasonic cells, but like, where would your IP start and stop then? If there's been this invention out there, the ion pair fuel cell, what's yours and protectable there?
Yeah, it's really around the stack and the system design. So a fuel cell, when I say fuel cell stack, that's the core heart of the fuel cell, but it requires what we call a balance of plant around it to feed it the things that it needs to operate optimally in an aerospace environment. So we bring some unique aspects to how we design our stack, and we also do some smart things with our balance of plant system design. We're also using liquid hydrogen, which is coal, and our high temperature fuel cells operate at a high temperature. So we're doing some really smart things in the thermal management space that overall reduce the weight of the system.
Okay. And so can you give people who are listening out there some specs or some excitement when it all becomes real and what it all means? So I think I read you might be targeting a first flight in 2026. If and when that happens, like, can you talk to what the plane will look like, the size, how the range, just
what it can actually do? I mean, I'll throw a quick tech spec. The power to weight of the fuel cells is a key metric. So we're targeting 2.6 kilowatts per kilogram. Only the boffins will understand that.
But that's 50% of our audience, so that's fine. That's good.
Yeah, great. That's super important. Yeah. And then when we talk about aircraft, we're starting with a 6-seat airplane, and that can carry, so 6 passengers, about 350 kilograms of payload. it'll be able to fly 500 kilometers on hydrogen, and that includes reserves. So that's like a useful range that you can actually fly. And that's a technology demonstrator that we're using to prove the technology. Then we scale up to a 15-seat aircraft that can fly 800 kilometers. And that can fly, for example, from Sydney to Brisbane or Sydney to Melbourne. It's a smaller regional aircraft, so it's unlikely to replace like A320s, but that's sort of the target. And then longer term, we think we can get up to about 3,000 kilometers with hydrogen electric flight.
Would that be for the larger planes, or is there a theoretical limit that starts applying where long range A380 style flights involving putting on an eye mask, will you be able to service that demand?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. So if you go back to fundamentals, hydrogen is 3 times lighter than jet fuel. So on that basis, you can actually fly further with hydrogen. The only catch is hydrogen is more bulky, so it takes up more space. So when you're trying to fly like relatively short distances where you don't need to go very fast, hydrogen can be really like a cost economical solution. When you try to fly long range across the like intercontinental divide, that's where we think hydrogen will struggle to compete with SAF in the near term. And so, and that's with wing and tube aircraft. We're focusing on conventional airplanes. In the future, there may be like blended wing body designs that come to market, which could unlock hydrogen electric flight of longer than 3,000 kilometers. But in the near term, we think it's that 3,000 Ks or less, which is about 50% of emissions from flying.
You're taking this iron pair fuel cell, you've got the unique kind of stack, which is where your IP sort of resides. Is there any other application that you could use beyond just airplanes or beyond just flight of humans? Could it be applied elsewhere?
Definitely. And this is interesting. We started in aerospace, but we've quickly realized that batteries also don't work for long haul trucking. There are some other applications on the ground where a lightweight fuel cell can actually unlock applications. So we're focused on commercial aviation. That's our long-term vision. But as people know, it takes capital and time to certify products and bring that to market. So we are looking at some ground-based solutions. Trucking and marine are 2 of the near-term ones where we might be able to get products into the market and leverage our technology elsewhere through licensing or other applications.
Well, maybe it's drilling into the competitive environment a bit. I guess there's things to discuss at both ends of the spectrum. At one end, you've got universal hydrogen that had a lot of funding attached to it and didn't make it through. Then you've got ZeroAvia at the other end of the spectrum in the hydrogen space that has a lot of capital directed to it. How do you see the competitive environment and how you walk the path between those two outcomes?
Yeah, it's definitely I would say crowded space, but we're not the only ones sort of pushing this way. It is hard when you see a company like Universal Hydrogen go under, but I think we are quite different to them. They were going after fuel logistics for aviation. We're focusing more on the propulsion system. So that's kind of like a key differentiator. So we see that, we take notes. We don't want to follow the same path, but we feel pretty safe that we won't do that. ZeroAvia is definitely the leader in the field. They have the most capital. I think if I drive straight to the key differentiator there, we actually purchased some of the fuel cell membranes that they're using in their high temperature fuel cell. So they're developing something in a similar space. We found that it didn't actually stand up to our requirements. And so we've moved to the next generation, this ion pair fuel cell. And so that's the key differentiator. And the key essence there is we think that we'll have longer lifetime and we'll be able to get to higher power densities with our technology. So that's like a core underlying technological difference. The other thing I think about is in a highly regulated, capital intensive environment, being the first is maybe not always the best, right? Like being a fast follower can actually be really powerful. And we've seen this in other startups we've worked at, hanging in the peloton and watching other people push the certification path forward. We can break from that when the time is right and still be competitive. And it's also still it's a huge market to decarbonize aviation. We're in Australia, they're in the UK and the US. So key differences.
Okay. So in terms of, keen to know what help you need, like we mentioned before, we have hundreds of millions of dollars of LOIs. I might phrase it like this, like what help do you need to kind of be able to turn those into real orders here and now?
This is probably like age old. People are sick of hearing founders say we need capital, but I think what we're doing, and specifically the time where the markets are at right now and being based in Australia, I think capital is probably one of the biggest risks. So we're fundraising, we're raising a round of capital now. So if there are investors out there that are interested in investing in this space, we've got an amazing team, a great strategy. Happy to hear from them. We were part of the Y Combinator cohort last year. And so we lean into that. I think that's really valuable. So other founders out there that think they might be able to help, or if we can help them, we always make time for that. And it's been really helpful on our journey. So
what I will say to our audience, if you're listening via video, we intend to put this out, is Bob's background is real. That is the real plane.
Do you want me to prove
it? We can end it by you just wandering.
I'll go run off and spin
it. If you can fly that plane, that'd be even better. But,
I'll spin the prop.
It's a new type of mic drop. But anyway, that's all we have time for. Awesome to hear from you. Sounds like you've got a great team tackling, a really important problem and have some really unique technology you're forwarding. So wish you guys all the best and look forward to monitoring how it all goes.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it, Nick. Yeah. I'll go spin the prop now. Cheers.
Over to you for your 60-second pitch about Enaxiom.
Enaxiom's on a mission to improve energy and water outcomes for industrial processes. And we do that through our patented system, HydroCool, which has been 10 years in R&D. And so essentially the system has very low electrical consumption, and it's a multi-purpose system. So it can, for example, be used as a cooling system while also producing ultra-pure water. And we use the system within a number of different industries. So we currently have projects within refinery, green hydrogen, and even cooling a data center.
Fantastic. So a huge variety of uses and so many questions. Great pitch. What is ultra-pure water?
Yeah, so ultra-pure water actually has some really stringent regulations around what you're actually allowed to call ultra-pure water. Effectively, it is highly purified water, and so you can't actually drink it. It would actually taste really bitter to drink. It has no minerals in there. It's actually sort of demineralized water. And so if you did want to drink it, you actually would have to add those minerals back in. And it is actually more expensive within industrial processes than water because of that high level of purification.
So what are the uses then of it? What do you need ultra pure water for that normal water won't cut it?
It's used in most industrial processes because the minerals in water actually can cause damage to equipment over time. And so they remove those minerals in the process. So some really heavy uses of ultra pure water are industries like green hydrogen, the semiconductor industry, pharmaceutical industries, but most industries will use it. It's also known as boiler grade water, so it's used a lot in boilers.
And so is that when you look at the bottom of your kettle, and this is a very basic example, but you get that lime scale, you get that buildup of left behind minerals when you apply, you've got that boiling process or in a boiler.
Absolutely, and it actually stops corrosion as well. So it's estimated that corrosion costs society about 5% of GDP, which is huge in industrial processes. So it stops that, and it stops that sort of lime scale. And I love that you use that example because we use that example when we are trying to explain to people what our material can do compared to other materials, and it's anti-scaling, anti-corrosive.
So taking a step back to you, tell us a bit in a nutshell, how does HydroCool work, and what are we imagining in our heads when you say HydroCool? What should I be picturing?
HydroCool is a very low electrical consumption system. And the reason for that is because we use low-grade waste heat as our primary energy source instead of electricity. And so you can think about the system like a thermal evaporation type system. We're very different because we actually use several different processes within our process design, which we've patented, and it's very different because we use different materials. So we're hard to compare to one specific equipment because most of the time we're knocking out multiple pieces of equipment because it's a multi-purpose design system. So for one example, we can knock out cooling system and a water treatment and a brine reconcentration. But it really depends on the industry that we're going into, what we can actually replace.
Certainly. So the output of ultra pure water is in a lot of industrial applications a commodity, but you're using a novel input and a novel process to reach that commodity output.
Yeah, and we're able to take in very highly polluted wastewater. So compared to other systems where you would need a lot of pre-treatment to use that water and to clean that water, we actually don't require a lot of that pre-treatment. And so we can handle what we call pretty nasty, very high ppm water and convert it to ultra pure water while at the same time cooling systems down.
And because of the wide array of applications of ultra pure water, can you tell us a bit about your current trials or your customers? How are you actually applying HydroCool at the moment in the market?
Yeah, I can't give you any names to any of our customers. We do have active customers in all three of our target markets that are very large international businesses. So we have a lithium refinery, also working with a manufacturer in the green hydrogen space, and we also are working with a data center as well around cooling.
Listeners of A Positive Climate for a long time will recognize this very much as a Nick Zeltzer question, so I hope I can do it justice. But can you tell us a bit about how Enaxiom makes money? And it sounds a bit like what you're doing at Enaxiom is water treatment and cooling as a service. So we're WACAS. Is it a mixture of hardware sales, but also the sale of the output or the sale of the process, really, that Enaxiom is focused on?
So I think really we'll probably end up with both. And as a startup, we're very focused on being simple. So at the moment, the business model is really to go out and sell. We will offer service agreements on top, which is more kind of a maintenance and service agreement. But in that model, the asset is actually being bought by the company. In the model that you're talking about, like water as a service or cooling as a service contracts, I think we will definitely grow into those, and we are at the moment trialing what that might look like in an offering. But essentially, in those models, the asset remains our asset, and then we obviously agree a quantity of water, a quality of water, or amount of cooling that we will provide, and are therefore responsible to maintain that asset and make sure we deliver. And I think software as a service has been around. We're all very used to SaaS. I think hardware as a service is beginning to take off. And I think from customers that we're talking to, there's sort of an appetite for both still. Some do just want to have the system, own and operate it themselves, and others are really interested in transitioning, what would be a big capital expenditure into OpEx and reducing that risk of actually having to maintain or change or do things like that. And so I definitely see an evolution in our business model where we probably will become more as a service business rather than selling hardware.
Are you seeing that there's already potentially areas where you could operate that model?
What you're referring to, I suppose, is how we require that heat to operate within industry. So as a first entry point within an industry, we need to look at how much waste heat is available. And so for listeners that might not be familiar with that term, what that actually means is about 20 to 30% of an industrial process's energy will actually get wasted as heat. And heat is actually a form of energy. And that means that heat is actually released into the nature, whether it's air or into hot water or whatever it is. As our entry point, because we run off that heat, we tap into that power, we actually need to make sure that there is enough heat within the process that what we're offering is scalable and offers a really big return. And so, yes, it's a little bit like our Achilles heel, but at the same time, there is so much heat available within industrial processes. And we think about that transition to net zero, where we're looking at paying for more energy or paying for more renewable energy. There is so much available energy trapped up in this waste heat that we need to think about first, because if you can untap or unlock, 20% or 30% more energy for your process, you can suddenly de-size. You need a lot more smaller system in these sort of renewable energy, your wind farm or your solar farm to take on. And we like to say is a really interesting report that said that available waste heat within industry, it was estimated to be about 4% of total energy consumption globally. Mm-hmm. And that's roughly about the size of the total energy consumption of Africa every year that's there that we can tap into already.
So that's, of course, a huge number. But are you seeing that there's potential a competition for that waste heat? Because as you say, that is literally just energy that is otherwise being shed. So I'm sure there's other processes and other, not even just competitors in the cooling space, but is that potentially a risk, or is that something you guys have identified and are looking to mitigate?
Yeah, you always have to look at what is the return on using that energy, for example. And I think traditionally industries haven't really looked at that heat because they haven't needed to. Energy's been cheap and we haven't had this pressure to transition the economy to a net zero economy. And it's really great because systems like heat pumps, for example, become more popular in their use. And you've always got to look at that business model on, if I use that heat for a heat pump, what am I getting back in return? What is that saving me compared to if I use that heat for hydrocool? So at high temperatures, there is actually a very good way to use that energy, a heat, and that's to make electricity. And that is the best use of that energy. And we don't compete at that high level. We compete at low grade heat, so about 45 degrees and up, where it's actually very hard to commercialize. And that's one of the reasons that we've gone after that low grade, because there's not a lot of competition, and there's not a lot of systems that can use that heat for a dual purpose and knock out multiple pieces of equipment just by tapping into sort of this low grade heat that's not used.
So your opportunity space remains a problem space for most other people in this sector.
I think we're quite new to it as well. We have conversations with a lot of customers. Have you measured your waste heat? And most of them haven't. Some are doing energy audits at the moment. And for anyone listening, if you are doing an energy audit, make sure that it does include waste heat, because you'll probably be really, really surprised how much energy is actually there available to you within that waste heat sources.
And then for your ultra pure water needs, if you have them, or cooling needs, which almost everyone has, then Enaxiom's there to assist if you do have that source of low grade heat.
Exactly. Thank you for the plug. Yeah.
It's meant to be a pitch fest, and I'm pitching it back to you. Apologies.
So it's worked. Yeah.
So what's next for Enaxiom, and what help do you possibly need? If you could have one great outcome out of someone listening to this episode, what would that be?
Oh, if we could have one great outcome, that would be talent. We are looking for exceptional engineers to join us. We're looking for a chemical engineer, electrical engineer to join us, sales engineer. So if you are listening and that fits you and this sounds exciting, we would love to hear from you. And it's just great to meet more people in the space that want to do something positive and impactful. And the second piece is we are raising as well. So we're talking to quite a few VCs at the moment, but for those that might be wholesale investors, they can also reach out to Impact Ventures.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tia. It's been lovely having you on the Pitch Fest, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Cheers.
So next up, we have Sahand from OptiGrid. Sahand, over to you for a 60-second pitch.
Thanks, Nick. Well, as you know, one of the main challenges in the energy transition is dealing with the unpredictability and variability of generation from renewables. Although the obvious answer is to use firming assets like batteries to deal with those variability and unpredictability, the problem is that wholesale electricity prices, which are the market signals for operating those batteries, have also become volatile and unpredictable. And that's means it's harder for batteries to know when to sell energy to the grid or buy from it. And that means lower returns on investment. So in OptiGrid, we are trying to enable battery operators to maximize the revenue from their batteries. We use physics-informed machine learning models to forecast electricity prices and then use that information to operate and trade the batteries in the most efficient way in the electricity markets.
Great pitch. Maybe just drilling in a little bit further. Can you just explore a little bit further how it actually works?
The first part, I guess the most important input to an optimization or trading algorithm for the battery is the price forecast. And as I said, it's become very volatile in recent years because the supply and demand balance has become more volatile. We use more than 70 different inputs, do feature engineering, pre-processing of data, and try to do the price forecasting as accurate as possible in a probabilistic way, and then use that information, which predicts the market situation in the next 24 hours, to find how the battery should be traded in the markets so that it can maximize its revenue across different streams. And that includes energy and ancillary service markets.
Okay, and you mentioned the 24 hours as a unit there. I assume it's forecasting continuously and updating its trading strategies much more often than that, probably closer to 5 minutes or even less. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So in the Australian market, because the market is run on a 5-minute basis, we update the forecast and bidding of the battery every 5 minutes. But because right now the battery's duration are 1 to 4 hours, basically they can only store energy for 4 hours of discharge at max. The price forecasting is enough to be limited to 24 hours ahead, from 5 minutes ahead to 24 hours ahead.
Well, how should we think about how material the value is that you can unlock? Obviously, there's a whole range of ways you could do this. You could have a human. You could probably have another software-based tool, or you could have your tool. How should we kind of think about the uplift that using OptiGrid kind of achieves?
Obviously, the return on investment of different battery projects are very different. So right now, the payback period of most battery projects are something between 6 to 10 years.
We're talking large grid scale. Is that where you
Large grid
focus?
scale, exactly. Large grid scale batteries, those big battery projects, is something between 6 to 10 years. And because the humans cannot obviously operate and trade these batteries every 5 minutes, all of them are run by autonomous bidding systems. So what we can see in our modeling is that if OptiGrid solution is used instead of the incumbent solution, this can increase the energy market revenue of the batteries by more than 20%. Let's say for a battery project that has a almost 6 year return payback period, this can reduce its payback period to something close to 5 years, which is relatively material.
Okay, so like that makes me think about the competitive environment. Obviously you've got battery OEMs that have a lot of capital, and they might not be getting all the way down into trading. Fine, but you've got other players like I think AMS that became Fluence and maybe became Siemens, and quite well funded. Obviously, you can't say everything or maybe explain it in layman's terms, but just can you try and get to like what is it that you can do that others can't?
Well, obviously, we are not super happy that our competitors are those well-funded organizations.
Yeah, it'll be you next after this podcast. Yeah.
They've got the funding to build an autonomous bidding system themselves. And indeed, Fluence and Tesla do have their own autonomous bidding system. What's very important here to notice is that building a battery optimizer, a battery autonomous bidding system, is not just building a software project. The data science part plays an important role because the return on investment of these projects highly relies on how good those optimizers work. Mm-hmm. And the breakthroughs in the data science and machine learning are not linear. So basically, more people and more funding doesn't necessarily help you create the best algorithm. You need the right people with the right mindset and the right motivations to be able to build a platform that uses the latest data science and machine learning techniques for the market and maximizes the revenue. And we are trying to do that in OptiGrid.
And is another part of it, like often I hear when people talk about new AI tools or machine learning, one of the key parts of it is the data. And often how proprietary that data might be, because that provides some sort of moat. But how does that play into this? Like, where is your data coming from, and can others rely on the same thing, or you have a broader suite of inputs?
So we use data from multiple different sources. That includes market data, which in Australia we are receiving from AMO. We use weather data, and we use some other information. But I would say probably none of this data is proprietary to us. What's proprietary is how we do the pre-processing of the data and how we do the feature engineering. Just using all the available data doesn't necessarily give you the best results. You can use hundreds of different inputs and still don't get very good results out of your machine learning model. It's very important to extract the useful information out of the input data and then engineer the features that are the inputs to the machine learning in such a way that you can get the highest accuracy for the application, which here is the battery operation and bidding.
And in terms of, by the sound of it, you're adding a lot of value, you're improving the payback. Like, how are you making money? Like, what's your pricing model? Are you charging a flat fee? Are you capturing some sort of that value that you're giving to the customer?
Just to give more context, we have two products, OptiForecaster, which provides the electricity prices for battery operation. And if, let's say, there's a client that has their own dispatch optimizer, they can use our OptiForecaster product. And we have OptiVider, which basically operates and trades the battery in the market autonomously. So for the OptiForecaster, it's an annual subscription fee, and the price is obviously determined based on the cost that we incur and also the value that it can add if one client decides to use it. And for OptiVider, it's a combination of a small upfront fee and again an annual subscription fee.
In terms of your traction to date, how would you summarize that?
So we spun out of the uni just a few months ago, March 2024. We raised the seed round from international and Australian VCs in July, just a few months ago. And since then, we've built a team, mostly technical people. We are now about 10 people building the OptiVider product. And we are now talking to multiple clients, which include some energy retailers and battery operators for testing and using the products once they're ready.
Awesome. And so you raised around in July. Your current investors are hopefully pretty happy. In terms of making a future pool of investors really excited, sort of if you cast your mind even, say, 5 years down the track, like how big could this business be? What's the scale of the opportunity here? Obviously, the battery market is going pretty crazy at the moment, especially in places like, well, Australia, California, Texas. But how do you think about the scale of what you're building?
Batteries are basically going to be the main type of energy asset that is going to replace coal and gas plants when a grid is going towards decarbonization. Right now, I guess wealthier countries like Australia and US have gone towards that, but other countries are following them as well. In terms of our plan, so we want to focus on trying to maximize revenue from the batteries regardless of their size, and our products are basically targeted into that audience. Right now, our focus is in Australia, but hopefully in 5 years, we'll have the product in 3 different jurisdictions. And we have shown that it can materially change the return on investment of the battery projects and make some projects that are not investable right now investable.
Yeah, and to the extent that your product can help accelerate the deployment, that's kind of like the biggest unlock for everyone. And so, Sahand, like what help do you need? If you want to do a shout out for what you're looking for, it could really help accelerate your traction vision. How can we help?
So I would say right now, because I mean, most of the team is technical people, we have great algorithms, we're building a great product, but I guess we need as much commercial engagement as possible. If you know anyone, or if you are an energy retailer or battery operator and you're interested in maximizing the revenue from your batteries, please reach out to us.
Awesome. Well, Sahand, it was awesome to have you on the show. It's a really important problem to solve, and we're excited to see what happens next for OptiGrid. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate that.
GridStore produces Solar Boost, which is a distributed battery that's wired in parallel under every 4 solar panels. And we use that battery to increase or optimize the power output of solar panels, much like a microinverter or a power optimizer. And we give you up to 15% more power, which based on last year's AMO pricing was worth about 30% additional net profit to a solar farm. And we do all of that for less than the cost of an alternative battery solution. Now we can do that as a retrofit, and we reuse all the existing infrastructure of an installation. So all the cabling and framework. We can do it for commercial, residential, and grid scale applications. And because our battery is small, our battery management system can manage each of the cells in that battery individually, so they don't get out of balance. And when you combine that with the fact that we use a lithium ion phosphate battery cell chemistry, it lasts 2 to 3 times longer and isn't going to catch fire. So we've got a cheaper, more efficient, longer lasting battery that's not going to burn down your house. And what's not to love about that?
Wonderful. So in layman's terms, I know just enough about this stuff to be dangerous to myself, but thankfully not others, as I'm not an electrician and not a solar installer. Just a tragic about this stuff. So roughly speaking, by putting a battery under every 4th solar panel in a solar panel string, you basically got a co-located, actually like right underneath the panels, dispatchable battery from each of those batteries acting as a cell in a network. So you're turning a solar farm into a BESS as well, into battery energy storage.
Exactly.
Is that right?
That's exactly what we do. And I guess part of the concept behind it is that when you're changing to renewables, we need all of this battery storage or firming capacity, right? And it's like, why just have batteries out there if you can do something else with them that's going to give you an upside? And that's what we've looked to do with our battery. And surprisingly, the way the economics work out, if you go for a distributed model, by the time you take out all the other costs, because we're reusing all that infrastructure, we're more than cost competitive. And then we're going to give you this upside in power output as well. So it seems to us to be like just a natural fit. Like if you gave us 10% additional power, there's 20 gigawatts of rooftop solar out there now. We could be adding 2 gigawatts of power. And the most important thing is it's stored. So it's coming back to the grid at a time when we really need it. So yeah, we think it's something that makes sense.
So it's answering the old question of what happens when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing. It's like, well, we've got lots of batteries under these solar panels ready to dispatch.
Exactly. Ready to go and waiting there. So that's the idea.
Fantastic. So let's say I know nothing about the problems you're solving with solar panels. That decreased output, there's losses to do with returning of power from the string back into the panels. Maybe very layman's terms, or a barbecue question. Why is it bad that my solar panels are getting hot?
Yeah. So look, I think if I step it right back to that really basic level, right, you've got solar panels that are wired in series. And when anything's wired in series, the maximum output you get from a solar panel is what the lowest producing solar panel in that string gives you, right? So if you've got 500 watt solar panels and you've got one that's producing 400 watts, everything is going to drop to that 400 watts. Now, the problem is that power from producing from the other panels doesn't go away. It's got to go somewhere. And what happens is it gets sent back to that lowest producing panel and gets wasted there as heat. And heat's the major cause of degrade of solar panels over time. So you've got a problem that's getting worse at an increasing rate. And that's why sorting this stuff out is important. It's one of those problems that's not looked at because we're only monitoring panels at a string level. We don't have individual power monitors on each solar panel. So, it's one of those other things that goes to the length of service life of a panel. When you're replacing a string at, say, when it gets to 80% of nameplate capacity, you've probably got one panel that's brought it all down to that level. And then you're seeing a whole lot of panels being put to landfill, earlier than they really should be.
When you say that that's not the state of play at the moment, that panels are being measured and monitored in series and string rather than individually, is that because that's just not the standard state of play or business as usual, or because of technical limitations with doing that?
Yeah. So it's more a cost issue than a technical limitation. So we could do it, but it just costs more probably than the value that people see in that level of monitoring. It's one of the advantages our system will give you in the sense that if we're wired under 4 panels, we'll give you a view of what those 4 panels are doing. So at least out of, a string of 24, you'll know which of those groups is underperforming. And so it'll make that whole diagnosis issue a whole lot easier. So there's a greater level of insight. We can also install under every solar panel, but we find that the trade-off on increase in performance versus CapEx just doesn't make it worthwhile.
So there's a few roles that Solar Boost is filling here. You've got the diagnostics, you've got the service life extension, you've got the dispatchability of power from those batteries. I guess if you're identifying your main target market for this tomorrow, is it that commercial solar farm end with thousands of strings, tens of thousands of panels, or 24 panels on a suburban roof?
Yeah. Look, from our business perspective, it's probably the larger installations. So we'd look even at like commercial is a good starting point as well. Obviously, we'd love to, start off with solar farms because it's one sale and, like you say, you've got megawatts worth of capacity there. But, you got to crawl before you walk. And so most of the pilots that we're talking to people about, it's like, let's do a string, prove up the benefits of that. If that works, let's do a couple more strings. And then when we see how that works and everything works together with, your reporting and your SCADA system, let's start to roll it out to the whole farm. So yeah, bit of a graduated process.
Can Solar Boost be retrofitted onto existing panels, or are we talking about, the previous guests of Positive Climate, 5B and this being on their Maverick and you could just start rolling this out at mass scale tomorrow? Or are you going and addressing the huge market of the solar farms already extant?
Yeah, so look, the great thing is that the way it's designed, the retrofit is the exact same as the new install. So if solar panels, they're connected by like an MC4 connector. So it's a bit like a hose fitting. You can just pull it apart. And we've got 2 of those MC4 connectors on our unit. So you just plug it back in and then you use the frame and you hang the battery on that. So yeah, simple and easy either way.
Fantastic. It's piggybackable on top of, there's no framing, there's no real worries about installation.
And look, the great thing is, right, being plug and play like that, it also means if something happens with the battery unit, you can do swap and go maintenance. So you just unplug one, plug another one in, and you're only losing, 2 to 8 kilowatt hours of storage. It's not like a mega pack goes down, and you're losing 4 megawatt hours of storage or something.
That modularity and granularity and hot swappability. Each battery in this case is only ever exposed to potential input from a small number of panels, so maybe 4 panels or even less than a full string. That makes sense. I read that this can be installed at an existing solar farm today or included in plans for a new build of a solar farm without any further approvals, which sounds amazing to me because it seems like the approvals process is the most difficult part of getting a solar farm up and operating. How have you achieved that?
Yeah, so certainly on the smaller 5 megawatts and lower, the key thing is that because we're sitting behind the meter, the interface with the grid doesn't change. So far as the grid's concerned, it's just solar panels outputting power at a different time. It looks a bit weird. We've also sized the batteries to the same instantaneous output as the solar panels. So it will look to be the same instantaneous level of output, regardless of whether it's coming from the solar panels or the battery.
Fantastic. One last question for you. What help does Solar Boost need most today? If you had some fantastic result out of coming on a positive climate, what would it be?
Yeah, look, I think it's a couple of things. It's always the case, we're a startup, so we're looking for capital at some point in time. So investors are always important to have on your horizon. But the key thing is really around finding more people to interact with for pilots and potential installations and trials. So we're really lucky. We were one of the winners of EDP's Global Energy Starter Program earlier this year. Like with EDP, we're looking at a process where we're sending solar boosts over to be tested at their Sun Lab in Portugal. And then we're looking to do a field trial probably in either Singapore or Australia early next year.
Very exciting.
So, yeah. Anyone that can give us something along those lines, that'd be fantastic. We'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. More on-ramps into massive scale.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Adam, over to you. You're an experienced podcast campaigner yourself. Over to you for a 60-second pitch.
Thank you so much, Nick. So we are CLT Toolbox. We do mass timber engineering software. So right now, concrete and steel it's above 11% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, more than the cars on our roads. And it's got one competitor, and that's new timber products. It can go in mid and high-rise buildings. Everybody wants it, developers, architects. They want to design sustainably and have beautiful timber buildings. But the problem is there's no software that makes it easy out there. So if you're an engineer, you're going to do a lot of manual processes. There's nothing taught at university. That's what we do. We provide infrastructure to make it easy. And our tagline is to bring sustainable building materials to the mainstream. We have a two-sided marketplace. One side, we sell engineers, license sales. And then another side is we sell to suppliers who pay us to access and distribute their products through to our engineers.
Awesome. We'll dive into that in a lot more detail now, talking about the ultimate product, mass timber. What makes that a really good building product?
It's a lot of things. Like sustainability is the headline, but at the end of the day, if you're relying on ethics, a lot of the time it just doesn't get through in construction. It's it's a pretty competitive industry and developers are looking to make money. So the big thing once you're in the industry is all about productivity gains. And if you design in timber and off-site products, so, we're talking about off-site construction now, which is big one. You can design up to 80% faster than concrete, because if you pour concrete, you're waiting for 2 weeks for it to pour, and that's your bottleneck you can't get around. But where you're designing off-site, you get 80% faster, and anything that has $1 per week associated with it, so it's called preliminary costs, so site infrastructure, craneage, people on site, all that stuff, that costs 80% more. So it's a new industry. The cost curves are declining rapidly, and you can get cost savings relative, but it's a hard task.
Yeah. While we're on that topic, a lot of climate tech products grapple with the green premium, whether they have one or not, and often it's a narrative around it. Okay, it's coming down the cost curve. Obviously, I'd love to understand a bit more about the nature of that green premium. Sounds like is it more expensive up front, but through those savings you mentioned, it's starting to level out? How should investors or customers think about it?
Yeah, there's a massive swing. There can be a big green premium, which scares everyone who's part of those projects away, and they'll never come back. And a lot of that is like designing a square peg in a round hole. So if you're trying to design a concrete building and make timber fit into that, you're going to just blow it out, and the project will be a bit of a disaster. And there's plenty of them that have gone around, but if you design with the product, there's a concept called design for manufacture and assembly. It's designing for the product, the building, to not have bottlenecks in the factory, because there's a material cost associated, but also the time and labor within the factory. They've got throughput that they need to achieve. So if you work with the product and with the manufacturing process, then the green premium starts going down at the manufacturing. And then, as I mentioned, the other one is assembly. Can you design so it just rapidly goes up, and you get that speed, and all that together, you can get cheaper, and that green premium gets eroded. And software like ours, like our product roadmap, not just structural engineers, but over time it is geared towards that, where you actually provide tooling, you productize all of the smarts to make it a flawless process, and you actually get those improvements.
That makes sense. What's happening in the industry at the moment in terms of, is there accelerating demand? Like, how do you think about the market size of the sector of the industry that's looking to deploy mass timber buildings?
Yep. Yeah, so it's huge. It's like the mega trend of decarbonisation. As I mentioned, it's 11% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. It's not like there's competitors to timber that are out there like at scale, and you can cut your emissions in concrete by a bit, but you can't get around the chemical reactions of that and steel. You just can't. And timber's, it's renewable. You grow your buildings like you grow your food, and the chemical reaction begins with photosynthesis, where you're sucking CO2 out of the atmosphere and creating a building product. So yeah, that alone, you got the problem, and then you've got like the one solution. So the mega trend of timber, it's like undeniable at the moment, and hopefully other technologies come along, like green steel, reliance on hydrogen, and laminated bamboo. It's in its really early days as well, but at the moment it's undeniable.
And hopefully you can establish that your product has a catalytic effect on, enabling the industry to kind of accelerate as well by having what your product does.
Yeah.
Maybe to kind of, set the scene on the product in terms of what does the product do that the existing solutions can't at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So that right now, if we don't exist, the structural engineer looks at a building and the elements that make up that building. You got beams, walls, floors, columns, concrete cores. You get a design for earthquakes, wind, all these sorts of things. And if we're not there, all of those things are done through spreadsheets. And for the most part, there is a fragmented software ecosystem out there, but all the gaps is spreadsheet building. And that just takes ages. And without the education at uni, the QA on building the right spreadsheet is really difficult. And then you got maintenance costs in maintaining it. Then because it's a changing field, you got changes to code, so spreadsheets become redundant. So yeah, we build automation there. So we provide the education in the design app to tick that. You give confidence in the design and just save heaps of time, basically. Run spreadsheets, pick up our tools, automate the whole process.
Yeah, there was a very important birthday recently, which was Microsoft Excel turned 40. So,
cool.
There's more solutions that we've had on this podcast that are trying to, in Microsoft Excel's life before it turns 50, but we'll see how it goes. So how do you make money?
Yeah, so there's two sides. So one is the engineering side. So they pay us an annual license fee. We've got a free version on the platform, which is like a top of funnel, and we've got to starting to get a good handle on our conversion rates into paid on the product led side. On engineers, you got sales led, which is like your traditional outbound demo booked sale. That's the engineer side. Then the other side is suppliers who sell their products. It's a bigger contract we get with them because we're solving a serious bottleneck for them, and we're just making it really easy for them to sell their products. They also pay us in two parts. One is an integration fee upfront, us integrating it on the platform, and that's once off, and then you get a recurring licensing fee with them as well to list their products on our platform, which is the distribution fee.
Just to kind of really get targeted here, like how do you really, to the first part of the offering to the engineers, like what is the really quick, simple pitch for them to want to use your product? Like is there numbers involved? Like I just want to make it really crystal clear on why they should stop what they're doing and use your product.
We started our business on a white paper, and the headline number is 500 unpaid hours to build your infrastructure yourself. And consultancy rates, that's about $100,000 plus. It's north of $100,000 to do it that way. Or with us, we do a much better job of it with the QA, and we eliminate all the risks. So on top of that, it's like our product principles really align with the specific needs of our customers and their specifics, like supply chain flexibility they want. They want to be able to design what's best for the client to drive those costs down. Not a black box. Engineers hate software that, they don't know what's going on underneath it. That's the other thing we focus on. The third is they don't like it being so fragmented. Like you could pick up a tool over here from his research project in Germany, and then you'd pick up this tool from a supplier, then you spreadsheet this, you do that. That's just a lot of piecemeal ways. So we get rid of that fragmentation and just like have member design connections all in one place and solve a lot of problems for them.
Awesome. And in terms of that, like your sort of traction, Where are you up to with the product? How many engineers are using it on one side? How many suppliers are kind of interacting with you on the other at the moment?
So we've got so in ANZ we've got a lot of cut through. On the supplier side, I think we've got every CLT supplier in ANZ. We've got every most of the GLT suppliers, bar a few small ones on the platform.
Right.
So we've got like perfect cut through in our starting market. On the engineering side, we've just entered second agreements and with 5x our first contract value. So that's increased by 500%. We got like pretty juicy enterprise agreements with the biggest engineering firms in the world. Don't know if I should say, but like they're the number one brands basically, and they enable us with our international expansion, by the way, because having those brands on it. So ANZ, exactly. So ANZ's humming. We're launching in Europe next month. We've got 2,000 users. That's not including our own. Not everyone's paid, but that's our users, and I think just under half are in Europe, and Europe is not the one that's just scaling because in terms of usage, but there's a couple of just key product features we need to unlock at the time of this podcast. And, in about a month's time, November, December, we'll be proper releasing in Europe. And we've got a lot of verbal commits on paid customers on tier one companies there. And we've got our first supplier deals signed there where they don't care about the ANZ market, which is a big deal because your first sales, the European suppliers want access to our ANZ base, but now we're started to get deals based on European merits alone. And that's where it's like, all right, we're pretty much close to ready to do scaling Europe, and USA and Canada's early next year. Well, we've got like a lot of traction there. Awesome. And people just like in the inbox just waiting for us.
Well, it sounds like an exciting time to have you on the podcast. What sort of shout out would you like to do in terms of help that you need kind of to accelerate you on your journey?
Early next year, we'll start raising again. So the right time to reach out is up before that. We've got an incredible cap table at the moment. So our leads being Archangel, Giant Leap, and Ecotone, Flying Fox, Gravel Road.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like a really exciting journey and a really important problem to solve. So Adam, thanks very much for coming on the show. I wish you all the best.
You're awesome, dude. Thanks so much, Nick. Have a love. Cheers.
Thanks, Adam.
Hi, I'm Dil from Dewpoint Innovations, and we're essentially developing the next generation dual function paint technology that can cool the built environment, but also generate water passively. And this is useful for three issues. One is increasing heat worldwide. So, the urban heat island effect, that's something we want to address. Secondly, water scarcity in a couple of regions and increase energy consumption. So just to give you an idea, in Southeast Asia, for example, demand for air conditioning units is expected to triple in 2050. That's like 300 million air conditioning units. It's something we hope to alleviate, in terms of demand for the energy. So there's that. And then the unique water feature capability, which can help with water scarcity. We've spun out of University of Sydney. We've been developing it for a decade, and we're now ready to commercialize the first product, which is the cool roof paint. And we've got a couple of interested parties from pilot partners, and that's something we're advancing on. But hopefully we can get a lot more interest so that we can test it in different markets of interest as well, because that's going to bring us closer to our mission, which is to have more sustainable built environment that's climate proof for the future. So yeah, that's a little bit about us.
Thank you, Dil. We love a big, hairy, audacious mission statement. And you said, you'd like to see a lot of houses, a lot of buildings with this product on it. You said, 300 million is the expected demand for air conditioners in Southeast Asia. How about 300 million buildings with Dewpoint product on it? Why not? Let's talk about how that could happen. So talking about the paint product, Sydney Snow, which is the reflective paint product. I read in your materials, it requires no primer and can be sprayed. So are existing buildings best for deployment of that product, like starting soon?
Yeah, I'd say retrofitting buildings and industrial infrastructure is probably where we can make the most immediate impact now, because, it's a product is versatile. We can apply it on things quickly in a cost-efficient method, whereas new builds kind of have a longer cycle to get to market. So you're right, it can be adapted, retrofitting in existing buildings now.
You said there that longer cycle. Is there a current kind of cadence of roof repair or resurfacing that you can leverage to predict waves of demand for the product going forward?
Yeah, it depends on the building type and the environment, but it takes about 5 to 10 years of cycle for roof repainting, and that's definitely something we could leverage. It extends the roof lifespan and then has that energy saving benefit as well. So yeah, I think that could align very well with what we're hoping to do when it comes to the housing market, especially.
Talking about the housing market, let's use your average suburban, I don't know, 3-bedroom house. What is the expected heat reduction inside as compared to a lick of white, Dulux Ultra White paint?
Yeah, this is actually a question we get quite a lot, and think products like Dulux Ultra White and similar products actually do offer heat reflective capability, but I guess our benefit is in that we've engineered a formula to provide superior solar reflectance, so up to 95%. And that means, and sorry, just for context, 100% of solar reflection means, we're basically reflecting all of the heat back. So we're pretty high up there. But I guess the other element of that is that we offer additional benefits to something like an ultra wide, which is, self-cleaning, minimal dirt pickup, and the lack of need for primers. So it's a cost-effective solution that can be used today to sort of help people who really need it.
Your pitch deck and reading through your materials, it says the technology is ready to be commercialized. So how ready are we talking there?
Great question. So we're at an exciting stage. So when we say ready to commercialize, it just really means we've done the technical validation, we've de-risked it, and we're at a spot where we're actually advancing on pilot projects with the industry. And we are looking for a lot more pilot projects as well. But the distribution and infrastructure to sort of scale, get into large scale is already there. So we can do that quickly. Everything's ready for the cool roof side of things, and the market water harvesting side of the product is something we're working on, and hopefully we can deliver in the next 6 to 12 months.
Excellent. Yeah, let's pivot to the other product. So the paint's really exciting, ready to commercialize. Water generation technologies and water capture, ambient, atmospheric water capture. We've had a previous guest on called Source. That was backed by Bill Gates. It was quite a buzzy company. They were using solar panels to collect atmospheric rainwater or atmospheric water. Does Sydney Dew, which is the product compared to Sydney Snow, does Sydney Dew for the water collection require the paint? Is that a paired couple of products?
So just to go back to Source, it's actually, we love Source. I think it's amazing what they're doing. I guess the difference is in our mechanism to collect water. So they need solar panels to convert the solar energy into water, and then electrical connections. And I think they've got a panel set up as well. But for us, it is, as you said, a lick of paint. So it's very passive water collection that really requires someone to put paint on an infrastructure that's already there, and it just interacts with the environment to capture moisture from the air, and then we can sort of scale in terms of the volume that's needed depending on the needs. But it's very low maintenance, low cost, and lack of hardware sort of solution.
What volumes of water collection are we talking? Again, also using your 3-bedroom suburban home. How do you describe the volume of water that could be captured, granted that it matters a lot on the environment that it's in?
So we're working on increasing the amount of volume that we can capture. But as of today, if we were to extrapolate what we can collect for a standard 3-bedroom home, which is, I guess, an average of like 200 square meter roof, we could collect 74 liters of water per day, which is, I guess it's okay for non-potable uses like, flushing the toilet, irrigation and things like that. So that's kind of where we're at. We've actually designed it so that it would be able to be captured by existing rainwater tanks. And that kind of makes it easier, I guess, from the market to adopt such a technology.
So who are the ideal customers for this right now? Like if I came to you, and would you prefer I was a commercial building owner with a bunch of warehouses, or developer of a big suburban development?
I mean, I guess from a high level view and some of the work we've been doing recently, our ideal customer profile is someone who wants to future-proof and climate-proof their infrastructure. And that could be, like you mentioned, a commercial property owner, developer, industrial applications we've had some interest from like oil and gas pipelines, for example. So it does vary, but it comes back to their motivations again, that they want to hit their net zero goals and they want to cut their energy costs. So those are kind of key things that they look for.
Hitting both the operational and sustainability stories at once. Excellent. What kind of help are you looking for at the moment in scaling the business? What's, if you had one wish from a fairy godmother in the business sense, what would you wish for?
I guess we're super interested in sort of getting pilot trials in key markets in Southeast Asia and then Africa as well. So, anyone out there who wants to kind of partner with us to get a pilot project ready, that we're super open to it. And that's kind of probably the next step in terms of us getting to the next value inflection for the company and then going out and raising more funds. So yeah, that would be it.
Thank you so much, Dil. I've really enjoyed learning about the product and both products, the paint and the ability to capture up to 74 liters of water off a suburban roof. That's exciting.
Okay, next up, we have Ruzbe from Eccentric. Over to you for a 60-second pitch.
Really great to be here. I'm Ruzbe. I'm with a company called Eccentric, and we are developing hardware for soil measurement. One of our big value propositions is that we're capturing soil carbon information, but in addition to that, and in parallel, we're capturing a lot of other data that we can use to inform efficient agriculture and increase sustainability of operations. And so we're talking things like micro-macronutrients, which enables precision agriculture and variable rate fertilizer applications, which have been shown to increase yields and decrease synthetic fertilizer use. So our technology helps farmers bottom line in both directions. They're growing more, so they're getting paid more, but in addition to that, they're using less inputs. And those inputs cost money. They also have an environmental footprint, CO2 footprint, production, transportation, application, all of that adds up. When it rains, some of those inputs might end up in rivers where they wreak havoc on ecosystems. Those rivers empty out into the ocean where you get massive dead zones in certain cases. And in general, being more efficient is a good thing. And that's what we're trying to do with our technology and business.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. I might just ask a quick question about your technology first. And just in terms of level setting around, like, where are you up to with it? Does it exist? Is it tested? Is it in the field? Can you just give a bit of color there?
Yeah, sure. So I did my PhD in Australia, invented the sensor that we're commercializing through Eccentric. Given our limited resources, we had to build the sensor as an attachment for existing portable X-ray fluorescence instrumentation. I don't know if your viewers know what portable X-ray fluorescence is, but these things are powerful devices. You basically zap your samples with X-rays, you detect signals, and you're capturing a lot of information in parallel, but you're not getting carbon information. And so the sensor I invented, we use it in conjunction with portable X-ray fluorescence, and we're able to capture all of that data in one analysis.
And so what's the sort of like business as usual state? Like, how is soil, let's just focus on soil and soil health. How is soil and soil carbon being tested at the moment?
Business as usual for soil measurement, traditional method of soil measurement anyway. You have to obtain your field sample, you ship it to a lab where it's processed and analyzed using big bulky machines. These things are really expensive and it can take weeks to get your results back. Oftentimes you have to use a different big bulky machine depending on which analytes you're interested in the soil. And that adds to the cost and the turnaround times.
I've heard it described once that while that might be accurate from that test, it's almost like at times getting a couple of grains of sand from like a beach in terms of how variable the actual soil can be across a whole farm versus what you might actually be capturing in your scoop that's going into the soil test. Is that sort of accurate?
That's a really big problem. There's a lot of heterogeneity, it's called, in the field. And so what people do normally is they take a composite sample, which is where you take many samples in a field. You zone out your paddock depending on soil type and management practices employed on that specific land. You'll take a few different samples, you'll mix them together, and you'll analyze that single sample. You'll extrapolate to the entire piece of land, which is crazy when you think about it. So with our technology, it is proximal sensing technique. It enables you to take many more samples, which enables you to build more confidence in whatever information it is you're after. In our case, carbon and macronutrients.
Let's make it real. Let's say I'm a farmer. That's 3 words I've never said before. But let's imagine, if we could, that I'm a farmer and I want to go and test out my soil and soil health using the Eccentric solution. How does it work? Well, what's the process like? Do you arrive at my site? Do they do it themselves? What's the customer journey?
So we're not targeting the farmers themselves. They won't be the users. We're going after the agronomists. I know there's a lot of other solutions out there in the market that have tried to target the farmers, and they've had some trouble. Farmers already have enough on their plate as it is. They have agronomists that they work with that go out into fields, conduct sampling, and provide recommendations based on the results. Mm-hmm. And so we're going after the agronomists. Now, I know other solutions have also tried to target agronomists, and we think that any solution that is targeted to the agronomists will need to provide the type of information that they're really looking for. So farmers won't use our solution because it is an expensive solution. Agronomists won't necessarily use other people's solution because it's either not providing the data that they're actually after. We've seen the reports that they look at. Carbon is one thing in a huge list of things that people are interested in. And so I think it's important for solution providers to take a more holistic picture of soil approach to soil measurement, and that's what we're providing.
Awesome. I'd love to talk about the competitive environment in this space. There's a number of pathways people seem to be taking to measure soil and soil health. Like there's Downforce, which is a company that's trying to use satellites. There's another EnergyLab alumni, Carbon Asset Solutions, that has a sort of device that's pulled along on farm on a cart or a truck. How's yours different and why is it better?
We're providing a more holistic picture of the soil. We're providing ground-truthed data. It's a proximal sensing technique. So as opposed to Downforce, which they're using modeling techniques using satellite data, ours is down on the ground. And Downforce might end up using our solution because they require ground-truthed data to periodically calibrate and validate their models. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that could be a really great way for us to work with these kinds of remote sensing companies, as opposed to Carbon Asset Solutions, which I believe they're using a technology called mobile inelastic neutron scattering. The mode of operation is entirely different. So they're using neutrons, whereas we're using X-rays. We're using X-rays with other things as well, I should mention. They're interested in carbon, whereas with our technology, we're providing other data as well.
Just kind of stepping back and trying to get potential investors excited about this opportunity a bit more. Like, how big would you say the market size is of what's ahead of you? Like, what's your addressable market?
The soil testing market is growing at over 8% compound annual growth rate, and it will be reaching 11 billion by the year 2030. And so a lot of that growth is happening in Southeast Asia, and I think Australia is very well placed to soak up a lot of that growth given our proximity to a lot of these Southeast Asian markets and time zone compatibility.
And you mentioned sort of like your distribution in a way, going through agronomists or selling to agronomists. In terms of the revenue model, like how do you sort of charge for your offering?
We're going with a hardware-enabled services model. So hardware sales generate one-off revenue, and then we also charge subscription fees to interface with our systems. On pricing, I will say it is a premium solution compared to a lot of the other things that are out there, but we're providing the kind of data that people are interested in and that agronomists, at least the ones that we've talked to, would be willing to pay for this kind of solution. And this is why we do what we do.
Awesome. And in terms of your traction, what can you say to get us excited about that? Do you have customers? Have you raised capital? Where are you up to with the business?
We're funded by AgFunder and Brink, among others, and we're currently raising funds. So if there are any investors that are interested in the technology or want to hear more, please drop me a line or visit our website. You know, we're one of the companies selected for New South Wales Fast Start program, which has us working out of Cicada Innovations. That has been very conducive for us. We're actually residents here. And we're also conducting pilots with PepsiCo, very large multinational corporation. That's also been really great for us as well. We're talking to a few different multinational corporations. And so if there's anyone that has experience leveraging those relationships and turning those conversations into recurring revenue, that would be wonderful.
Rusbeh, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really excited about what you're building. Soil and soil health is a really important climate solution. So thanks very much for your pitch.
Yep, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Renate, and I am one of the founders of Brownie, which is a platform that is changing the way that business is done for more than approximately 400 million SMEs worldwide. Now, these 400 million SMEs represent more than about 50% of the global GDP, which is huge. SMEs are the backbone of the economy in any country. They are actually a really big deal. And they are facing external pressure from stakeholders to become more sustainable, whether that be from corporate customers or governments or banks or investors, or even from their own employees or their customers. And unfortunately, they have absolutely no idea what to do, where to focus, or even where to start. And unlike the big ends of town, the big guys with deep pockets, there are no resources dedicated to support them. But that is where Brownie comes in. We are an action-based platform that guides the SMEs on where to start based on the industry that they're in, their level of risk, and their level of ambition. We suggest tangible next steps on what they can do now and connect them to resources that can help them support on their business goals. Brownie provides the tool to confidently track and monitor and share their progress. And we really put them in a position, we hope, to win more tenders, to attract and retain more corporate customers, to engage and attract more passionate staff, and hopefully win more customers, because that is what it's all about. Oh, and we do focus on all 17 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, because as we all know, sustainability is way more than just carbon. Brownie makes sustainability simple, easy, and fun, because with Brownie, sustainability is always in the baking.
Lovely. Well, that was great. It was polished. And I also got to say, before we get into questions where I don't just gush, I absolutely love your guys' branding. It's so good.
Awesome.
As a kid born in 1990, the 80s retro look is just delicious.
Oh, and that was the hope. We wanted to be inclusive and fun and not take ourselves too seriously. You know, our name is Brownie, sustainability in the baking. We give Brownie points for businesses that are really engaged in the platform. So we really try to make it fun to do the right thing. So instead of, and everybody craves a brownie, which is why it's also great.
Absolutely. So the answer to this question might go back to what we just talked about and the ways that you try to be very human and deal with people in like a person-to-person way and sort of break down some of that imposing opacity with large customers. So you're focused specifically on SMEs, and how is that different than your big corporates and how you're approaching them?
Yeah, great questions. The corporate space is inundated with solutions. I used to be a sustainability consultant back in New York City, and people would pay tens of thousands of dollars to have a consultant come in and help guide them to what they should be doing. SMEs don't have that budget, they don't have the time, and they don't have the resources to dedicate to this. So what Brownie's solution is really trying to be quick and simple and easy to guide the SMEs on what they should do. Instead of boiling the whole ocean and eating the whole elephant and whatever analogy you want to put in there, we really focus them on what they should be doing across environmental, social, and governance. And then we provide tangible actions that they can take. So something really concrete that they can go back to their businesses and implement. And then we go a step further and connect them to the companies that can help them, which is very different to the big ends of town that just pay someone to go in and do it for them. It's a check the box exercise. Done.
Absolutely. So one of the big differences there you've identified is it's the decision maker is also going to be the implementer in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm sure you've got a good answer to this, but like, what are some of the other key barriers that are making it hard for SMEs to take action in sustainability?
Yeah, the fact that they want to run their business, unless if an action doesn't align perfectly with them running their business, becoming more successful and winning more work, it unfortunately has to take a back seat. And what we're really trying to show with Brownie is that you can actually become a more successful company by becoming more sustainable. And one of the very simple examples, it's so simple, but if you replace your lights with energy efficient light bulbs, your energy efficiency increases, your electrical bill decreases each month, therefore you save money. Oh, and you're reducing the amount of greenhouse gases you emit to the atmosphere. So really trying to flip the script and talk about sustainability in a business sense and a financial incentive performance sense to really support SMEs.
So it's a challenging environment that SMEs are operating in. It's more complex by the year, probably by the day. So how does Brownie work, I guess, in a nutshell, to help them and break through that busyness and that amount of overwhelm?
Yeah, absolutely. So we make it really simple. We demystify the sustainability landscape. We make it really simple. We start at the user experiences. Very briefly, the SME will come to the Brownie platform. They'll answer a bunch of questions that are top of mind. Who are you selling to? Why are you here? What pressures are you facing? And then Brownie will actually suggest where they should start. So that could be energy, water, waste, cybersecurity, DEI, employees, communities, whatever it is. The SME then selects the areas that are of interest to them or they want to focus on. We provide tangible next steps that they can take and then go a step further and connect them to free resources or to companies that can actually help them do that. And we gamify the whole thing. We create that stickiness. We give brownie points because why not? We're brownie. And it's all based on an open source scientific framework coming out of the UK called Future Fit Foundation. So it's actually based on data and science and guts. It's not just me and my co-founders saying, do X, Y, and Z kind of thing.
So I'd written this question in advance, full disclosure, and I described in this question Brownie as a marketplace. So first, I'm interested to know, if I called Brownie a marketplace, would you agree?
Yeah, no, I would say that's correct, yes.
Yep. So it's pretty common for other marketplace models to have this clip the ticket transactional. We take a surcharge off fulfillment or an order, but you've gone the subscription model. So it's a bit like LinkedIn Learning for SME owners, or it's almost a cohort because they'll be moving through this process with others. Why have you gone for the subscription model?
There's so many things I wanted to pull on there, and you kind of touched on all of them. So Brownie is really trying to create an ecosystem of businesses to support each other to become more sustainable. We also have actively gone against commission-based and clipping the ticket models, despite the fact that a lot of people have told us otherwise. And the reason we wanted to do that is because we really want to be seen, and not just be seen, but actually being on the side of Team SME. So we really want to present the options to the SMEs that are in their best interest for what they should be doing, not presenting companies that are getting more work, so therefore Brownie's getting more profits kind of thing. We see that as being against our values, number one being integrity. So we really wanted to remove any perceived perception of bias and be on Team SME and then just support them with all the options that they have.
So the flip side of the subscription model, of course, is as soon as you got a subscription model, you want to keep people as long as possible on it, that lifetime value of the subscriber. What have you got in place to prevent someone jumping on, doing the biggest bang for the buck, lowest hanging fruit, minimum, get that big uplift, and then jumping off and thinking, my job's done for the day?
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the core features about Brownie is the fact that the actions that we suggest to the SME really meets them where they're at in terms of their sustainability maturity. So an SME that's very nascent, has done nothing in this space, will be shown and suggested the very simple actions. As they start to take them, we give them branding points. They start to upload their documents to show what they're doing. To again, Canada greenwashing, it's all very well thought through. They start to increase their ESG score. That gives them a little bit of a dopamine hit. They get excited. They can start to benchmark themselves against their peers to see how they're doing. And the actions that they then get suggested become more and more sophisticated and more advanced. So Brownie plans to be kind of like a sustainability management tool that actually guides them throughout their whole sustainability journey. The model that forms our algorithm is based on regenerative sustainability as well. So once a company does everything they can to be net zero impact across people and planet, we then suggest action they can take to be regenerative and to actually give back to the planet. So no one will ever get a perfect score unless they continue to use the Brownie platform and improve, and then they can start to give back to the community as well, which is super exciting.
One more quick question, and then we'll have one more after that, but just sort of a general one. And forgive me if this is going off base entirely, but knowing the marketplace and knowing that when you're assessing suppliers for something and it's very important to your green credentials, you'll use a list from a trusted source like a B Corp or some other accreditation source. And so the Brownie, of course, is more active in the fact that you're helping people progress through this journey and identify even their journey to begin with. But how will you kind of interact with those other lists? And do you want to be also in that space of people actively come to Brownie to select a vendor for a project and sort of find companies to work with?
Absolutely. So the answer to that is yes. And the reason I say that is because ideally, the way that we will promote and support third-party providers on the Brownie platform is those that are actually walking the talk themselves. So people that are actually taking steps to become more sustainable themselves will be elevated in terms of visibility from the SMEs. We also want to work with, B Corp and social traders and other accredited organizations to actually show that we can help SMEs become certified in whatever, enter name of certification platform that we're there, and actually really guide the SMEs to become whatever their business goal is and actually help them reach their goal.
We ask everyone here in the Pitch Fest, what do you need? What's the lowest hanging fruit for helping you level up?
I mean, we're an early stage startup. We need everything. I think right now the most valuable support would be, introductions to corporate customers that know they need to do something. They want to support their supply chain. They want to support their value chain. They want to support their SME customers. A simple, easy, and fun tool to do that. Well, I think I might have the answer for you, and I think it's called Brownie. So...
Next up, we've got Prashant from Infigo Labs.
Thank you. So Infigo Labs electrifies the production of very high temperature heat. So we produce hydrogen in situ, consume it, and produce very high temperature heat to convert it back into water for electrolysis. So we're not imposing a water footprint. So electricity comes in and high temperature heat comes out. So how do we do that? Well, everyone knows how hydrogen and oxygen is produced using electrolysis. Everyone lets go of the oxygen. We don't. And bringing the two gases together is normally a detonation. But in our technology, we drastically slow down that explosive reaction to produce very high temperature flame of steam and thus create true zero emissions heat for the hard to abate sector.
Let's talk about those hard to abate sectors. Like, what are those sectors that require very high levels of heat?
Yeah, so the hard to abate sector, as the name clearly says, is our industrial sectors that require very high temperature heat. We're talking temperatures well exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius. So we're talking about cement, steel, fertilizer, glass, and similar industries, but particularly ethylene. And that's the one I mentioned in the end, because most people are not aware that ethylene is the largest volume molecule humans make on this planet, even more than fertilizer. And it's ubiquitous. It's in everything from synthetic fiber in our clothes to detergents, soaps, every construction material that's made out of polymers and plastics. And the list just goes on.
So that makes sense. And I'd love to just drill down into the solution just to make sure that I get it fully. So obviously you mentioned electrolysis, the splitting of H2 and O. Your solution is able to take the oxygen, create steam, and kind of have that at such a high temperature that's able to be used in these hard to abate sectors. What's the secret sauce? And I will say I was impressed to see a pitch deck that actually had a bottle of secret sauce in it. So yes. How do you see what your secret sauce is in regards to how the process works?
So we have a very novel take on the combustion reaction and its map. I'm a hydrogen combustion engineer. So between 2007 to 2011, I was responsible for de-risking a hydrogen burning gas turbine for the Australian government. And there's a lot of work that came out of that space. And I have my research degree in hydrogen combustion from the University of Queensland. So essentially, we are using a very novel approach to navigate that combustion map is what we are. And then we are using that in a ceramic line reactor. So we're not exposing any metal to the reaction, which enables us to achieve very high temperatures unconstrained by metallurgy.
The hydrogen that's coming out of the process from water, is that the same technology before you get to the oxygen? In terms of what other, can you use any sort of, PMYM electrolyzer?
Yes, so any electrolyzer can be used. So we are agnostic to the electrolysis process. Mm-hmm. Moreover, we are agnostic to even the sources of hydrogen. So we have sort of future-proofed ourselves in a way, because as alternative sources of hydrogen and different technologies come about, which can produce hydrogen from wastewater or biological sources. So we can use hydrogen from such sources as well. So we are quite future-proof because all we need is a source of hydrogen and a source of oxygen. That's why we emphasize that we are a very unique hydrogen use case because we are not transporting hydrogen or we're not doing anything fancy. We produce it in situ and consume it in situ to produce that very high temperature flame of steam, which is so essential to decarbonize the hard-to-abate sector.
Again, let's talk about your customers. If I'm a customer, I need some really high temperature steam or heat. How do I think about the green premium of your offering? Is there one? Is it on the way down?
Obviously, green premium is the key thing, which creates a barrier for the large industries to embrace decarbonizing. And what we have is perhaps the best value proposition for minimizing that green premium drastically. So when applied to ethylene, we are changing the chemistry in a way that we are maximizing ethylene yield to the chemistry maximum unconstrained by metallurgy. So we are bringing about a 15% increase in ethylene. We are producing more acetylene, which is another very high value product. And then we are completely eliminating their decoking interruptions. So we're increasing their uptime by a significant 8 to 12%. So 15% increase in ethylene yield, a significant boost to a high value product. And then we are completely eliminating their 20 to 60 day decoking interruptions, giving them a massive uptime. So these enable the ethylene sector to embrace our technology and decarbonize. And reduce the green premium, yes.
It increases the ethylene yield, as an example, by 15%. So where are you up to on proving that? Is that sort of we have used at the benchtop, or are you deployed at sites? Like, kind of, where are you up to in terms of?
So we have actually used laboratory scale reaction kinetic data sets to develop our technology, and this has been reviewed by the R&D teams of our major customers. And so we have the world's largest ethylene producer who has already provided us with a letter of support for our technology. We have signed NDAs with another major ethylene producer. We have progressed significantly through our technology due diligence. And we have another third ethylene producer currently reviewing our technology. So we have that customer traction, all from overseas, the US and Europe at this stage.
Industrial customers have very different needs. Heat is not just the same everywhere in terms of how they need to incorporate it. There's a lot of different technologies trying to target that. There's biomethane being one of them. There's a lot of different companies like MGA Thermal and Rondo Energy that are using like different variations of hot bricks. In terms of your technology, why is it better and how is it different?
So when it comes to addressing industrial heat, we need the multi-pronged approach. There's no denying that. Where we are different from these technologies is our ability to operate our reactor under pressure and squeeze the hundreds of megawatts into existing facilities. So what we enable is straight, seamless retrofit into existing furnaces.
Okay.
Whereas when any brick type storage is utilized, the bricks are typically housed in containers or structures which cannot be effectively pressurized. So when the heat is extracted typically from these kind of structures, it uses large volumes of air or nitrogen to extract the heat. And thereby there's a challenge to how to squeeze that heat then extracted into existing processes.
Prashant, we're almost at time. Maybe just to wrap up, what kind of help do you need to accelerate you in your journey?
So we have currently got significant interest out of the US and Europe. And we truly wish to develop our technology at home here in Australia. And we are really wanting those connections in the hard-to-abate sector within our country so that we can have project partnerships to deploy our technology here.
Awesome. Well, hopefully being on this podcast can help you on that journey. It's been great to have you on the show, and wish you all the best for the future plans.
Much appreciated.
So my name is Debbie O'Byrne. I'm one of the co-founders at Planet Price. So imagine, Mark, if you could measure and quantify your company's entire environmental footprint in under 24 hours. And I'm not just talking about carbon, but land use, water, pollution, the whole shebang. So that's exactly what Planet Price does. With our AI-driven platform, we ingest large data sets from finance and procurement systems. We sort that often messy data into categories. And within 24 hours, we can really give you some high-level insights into the hotspots and blind spots in your data. So that helps us hone in on things that are really important, and we can get right down to a granular level out of products, comparing different scenarios to help reduce that Planet Price. So our solution helps organizations to get ready for disclosure reporting, maintain the social license to operate, understand supply chain risks, make more sustainable procurement decisions with robust data analytics. So we're already working with large utilities, manufacturing and government departments across Australia and New Zealand to do all of the above. So if any of that resonates with the challenges you're facing, please reach out to us. We'd love to help.
Fantastic. Thank you, Debbie. So you're essentially trying to boil down the planetary impact for procurement for businesses into a single price, aka the planet price.
Yep.
So let's imagine I'm a business and I want to invest in a new fleet of vehicles. Mm-hmm. What data would that be taking in for Planet Price to give me that price?
So like I said, the first thing we would do is make sure that the fleet question is the right question to ask. So we would challenge some assumptions by looking at the overarching piece. And if we decided that was something worth looking at, we would seek to get information around what kind of data you would need to make a better decision. Now, often companies might necessarily have that data if it's not in their fleet, but so we would have to go and seek the data required. So there's a lot of There's a lot of really good data out there, and we license some of the, the most comprehensive data sets in the world. But there's also things like EPDs. So EPDs are environmental footprint or environmental product declarations, and a lot of them are open access, and they're becoming much more open all across the world, where you can go out and dig into those data sets. But we do really want to refine that information in a robust way as possible. So we would, we would find a way to make sure we're asking the right questions to compare two different types of EV cars, for example.
So let's say you do get that price back, and you've identified maybe two EVs, and they each have their own planet price. What do you expect the customer to do with that information?
So we already have customers using it in that way, not necessarily for EVs. We haven't had that as a challenge yet, but customers are taking those two different versions. A good example would be two different versions of asphalt, and we will run that through the platform, and when we will show them that this one has got a lower planet price than that one, and that would be, potentially for different reasons. We're getting a lot of innovation in the eco product space, where companies are using lower carbon processes or lower carbon materials to drive that those eco credentials into a safer space. So we're already using it in that way, and we just happen to have done that for quite a few councils in Australia.
So you just said councils there, which might sort of help answer this next question. Who are some of the key target customers for the tool? Is it usable by government and SMEs?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been using it with lots of different clients. So last year we did the whole capital spend for the Ministry of Education in New Zealand, and they've come back to us this year to do it again. And not only that, they want us to open up a portal for 900 schools in New Zealand to be actually able to engage with their own data, to see their own planet price, in order to kind of help not just to see the facts, but to use that as a way to educate people. Most people don't know what the planetary boundaries are. So when you tell them we're breaching 7 of 9, they're like, holy crap. There's the planet's, warning light system going off, and people are often not even aware of that as a framework in and of itself. So that would be a large ministry. We've got manufacturing customers who are using it to get a really good look at their scope 3 analysis, which a lot of them are under the pump to declare and report their disclosures on scope 3. And then we're also using it with utility companies, councils. So, we're agnostic about, anyone can feasibly use the platform. The real challenge is, where are the data sets? And some data sets globally are more comprehensive than others. So it's not really a barrier for which customers we can work with. It's what is the best information to get you to the answer you need. And just be really clear when we can't get too detailed. We don't want people getting overconfident about what they can tell when the data maturity is generally not that advanced, and that would be fair across all sectors.
Yeah, certainly. So we're limited more by the data sets than by the application of that data for making
that's a really good
decisions.
way. Absolutely.
Excellent. So what's the current process look like for adding products to the platform? And what do you expect it or hope it to look like in, say, 12 months' time?
Okay, so that's a fantastic question, which I'm delighted to answer, because it used to be quite manual. We would work with clients, and we had a kind of like drop-down menus. And I mean, there's still some really great tech in the background, but it was quite a manual process. Now, with the speed of AI, it is astonishing what we wouldn't have even thought 6 months ago we could do this, where we will give the AI a photograph, and it will break the photograph down to its constituent parts, the metals, we did a drill, all the bits, the gold, the copper, all the things that would go into making that. And it calculates the planet price almost instantaneously. So we've just run a sample just this week with a client who, we put 100 products from their catalog through the platform to calculate that planet price. So that's not in market yet. The standard planet product calculator is in there, but this is what the future looks like for us.
So what you said there about certification and sort of the AI being this diagnostic or analytical tool, which then has to have some extra time and attention placed on it to reach that certification stage. Are there any reporting frameworks or certification standards currently that Planet Price is part of or certified by?
So what we're doing is we're working with clients who are seeking disclosure reporting. They have to meet this very, very robust standard to make sure that whatever their board is putting out into the market is backed up by science. So we're probably on our third or fourth audit now, for either it's EY or it's, somebody is doing that auditing piece to accredit. So, and I think we're doing really, really well. The feedback we're getting is that our capability is much more granular than they've seen other organizations be able to do.
3 more questions for you, short and sharp.
Sure, go for it.
How does Planet Price stand out from other supply chain tools in the crowded space of helping the climate transition?
Yep. So this last count was a few weeks ago. There's 750 carbon platforms out in the market. A lot of them are reporting, rear view mirror reporting. This is what you did last year. So what we want to do is we want to give people a tool to make decisions, to change something about their system so that their report looks better next year. But no one is really doing the other planetary boundaries. Everyone is doing carbon, carbon, carbon. That's a very narrow tunnel vision. And we want to widen the aperture and get people to think about life beyond carbon. So I think that's where our key differentiator is.
Broader scope. Excellent.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, sorry for the blunt question, what's the revenue model here for Planet Price? I understand
so we have a SaaS
platform, but you also do consulting. So
we have a SaaS platform. So people pay for subscription. They can pay for a one-off tread lightly assessment, which gives them a snapshot of their whole system. But obviously, we much prefer people to be on the SaaS. And we haven't figured out how to monetize yet our yet to be named material extractor, but that's a work in progress.
Fantastic. What help does Planet Price need at the moment? What are you looking for? What can our listeners potentially do to help Planet Price achieve your mission?
Obviously, we need sales. We need to continue to develop the platform, and every client we work with, we learn something new that gets incorporated into the learning cycles. So we need more learning cycles, and we need more one of those aspirational clients who are willing to open the aperture beyond carbon. So if anyone in your network is up for that, we're happy to talk with anyone and trial some. We do lots of trialing of data. It's much more powerful when people see their own data in the platform than some generic demo stuff, which is just not quite as interesting.
Absolutely. Which goes back into that getting more data in, and as that process develops and matures, it's going to be much quicker turnaround time to make it a realistic and recognizable snapshot of a business quicker.
Yeah, great.
Very exciting. Well, thank you so much for your time, Debbie. That was such a good rundown. I'm very excited by Planet Price. I'm looking forward to seeing where you go from here.
Awesome. Thanks heaps for the opportunity.
Pleasure.
I love the yellow hat. I think I might have to go get one.
Thanks for listening to another episode of A Positive Climate. Check out the show notes of this episode if you'd like to know more about today's guest. Also, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn for further details.
And if you want to help us out even more, feel free to give us a rating and hit subscribe on your favourite podcast app so you don't miss an episode. If you know any other fantastic companies you think we should feature, feel free to send us an email at hello@apositiveclimate.com.